comments on the agenda, I'll take a motion to approve.
This is Tim Payne. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I don't believe we need a second on this one, so all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, agenda is approved. Any public comments from anyone in the public dialing in, this being an open meeting? Hearing none. We have minutes approval from the July 23rd. I was not there, so I'm assuming the minutes are good. Any additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve.
So move. This is Craig Dawsey.
Very good. Thank you, Craig. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. Brian, you're up for a manager's report.
All right. So obviously these are, as usual, strange times, but we've been continuing to operate as best as possible normally, just like everyone else. So with that, kind of an update on the end, what we figured out will be how much funding we have to continue with the grant. We expect that we'll be able to continue with, under the current grant, continue those activities through February 28th of 2021. And so we've been working with Lewis Littleton at our project manager at the Office of Economic Adjustment and our finance staff here at PPACG to just make sure we're all good to go through that term. And Lewis Littleton is on the line, so he's here to listen in on our process. We're also working on, we had some meetings recently. The meeting was on Friday, September 18th, 2020, with a variety of transportation partners on the civilian side, just to figure out what are the details with how we might go about doing some design work related to the US 24 Peterson Boulevard interchange, just adjacent to the north gate of Peterson Air Force Base. And so now we're going to be working with the OEA just to clarify what types of design work could be performed in preparation for getting that, moving it along to getting towards a shovel-ready process. Along with that, on terms of updates, I seem to be skipping around a bit, sorry. Don't mean to make you seasick here. In terms of general program updates, with task 3, we've been working on with our GIS staff internally, and task 3 is the energy and flight airspace use mapping. And so we've still been working on collecting some data related to trying to create a map. Also, we've been working together with our finance staff, our executive director, and the OEA to work on a draft application to continue implementation funding. This would, in theory, start at the end of this grant, so in March 1. And with that, also, we understand from Lewis that on the federal level, of course, a lot of what's going to happen in terms of the timing is going to be dependent on the fiscal year 2021 federal budget. However, we do understand that the OEA is expecting us, so we are hopeful that our application will be successful to continue work, and it'll be working on a more focused set of tasks, as well as many of the things that we've been doing already. Also with that, the budget was approved for PPACG at the last PPACG board meeting. And then with the City of Colorado Springs, they have kicked off their Colorado Springs Southeast Community Plan Technical Steering Committee to start with that Southeast Community Plan process. There's a lot of stakeholders involved with that. And we were part of that meeting on September 30th. And that area, just so you have context, it doesn't appear to be exactly a fixed boundary quite yet, but the general boundaries are going from roughly where the northern part of the cantonment area of Fort Carson is, and going to the east towards the southwestern boundary of Colorado Springs Airport. And I don't know exactly where the northern and southern boundaries are, but my understanding, the northern boundary is probably around Fountain Boulevard and then heading south to where it meets up with Fountain and county jurisdiction. So we'll be following along that and seeing how that relates to some of the work of this committee. And also the Associated Defense Committee is holding their virtual summit, and so I've been attending some of those meetings as well. I'm trying to see if in the process I missed anything, but I think that is it. Are there any questions or anything else anyone wants to ask me about current activities? All right, with that, I am now done. Thank you.
Okay, hearing no questions. Next item up are the presentations. We got Retool COS up first. Morgan, are you here?
I
didn't
am
know
here.
you are. Okay, take her away.
Hey, everybody. So we haven't had really an update for Retool for quite some time, but I am excited to say that things have still been moving along throughout this process, but we had some tweaks to the overall plan. So I just want to give a quick update on where things are. So next slide, please, Brian. The process overview, I'm sure that many of you are very familiar with this slide. The first step, obviously research. The second, working through those different modules. Click one time, Brian, to show the first module was focused on zoning districts and their permitted uses. Click again. The design standards and development guidelines is module 2. And the third, another click, thank you, is all of the administrative processes. And one more click is, so we are currently focused on module 2. This is, we came from module 1, obviously, because it's sequential. So module 1 focused on those zoning districts and permitted uses. We wanted to take some time to look at the residential zoning districts, focusing on density for those currently 6 districts that we have, and needing to tweak the language so that we can provide everybody with the module 2 draft. So next slide, please. So with that, we've had to make some changes to the schedule. So I've been working with Clarion, who is our hired on consultant for this. They're literally right now finalizing everything with module 2. That will be really the meatiest part of this whole process. I do want to say that even after module 2 has been released, it is not to say that if you miss out on providing comments during the scheduled timeline that you see on your screen here, it's not to say that you're not able to make any comments if you have them in the future. We're taking this in a rolling process. So module 1, 2, 3, everything will be combined in the consolidated draft, and then we'll have a final draft. But to go over this schedule, the next public open house that we'll have is mid-November. This will be held virtually. And if anybody is interested in getting information for that meeting, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to share that information. The next day, the module 2 public draft will be available on the Retool website. And you'll notice that there is about a month and a half to read through that document. Of course, this is factoring in the holidays, as well as considering that this, again, there's a lot of information in module 2, and we want to provide enough time for everybody to read through and submit those comments. Comments need to be emailed to the Retool COS at coloradosprings.gov email address, and I can include that in the chat after my presentation. And I am monitoring that email address, but a lot of the reason to have it separate is so that it doesn't get lost in all the other things that I'm doing. So emailing those comments directly to that address. The next module, again, module 3 is focused on the administrative processes largely, but that also includes things like appeals, waiver of replat, all platting processes. That open house will be at the beginning of January of next year, and the third module will be released the following day, found again on the website. Consolidated draft will be in March, and that will be available for review in the spring from March to April. Then we will be working on the final draft and hoping for adoption in early 2022. So again, the schedule has changed a bit from what it was originally. This information will be updated on the website. It has not yet been changed. So if you want a copy of this, I think that everybody has a copy, but again, reach out to me if you have any questions about the content, scheduling, how you can get involved, any of that, because I would be happy to have any of you in this process. So again, just a really quick update, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to throw those out. All right. Well, I will provide in the chat the Retool email address. So again, you can shoot any emails over if you have any comments, ideas, or questions. And yeah, that's all I have.
Hey, Morgan, this is Craig Dawsey with the county.
Yes, sir.
I do have a question.
Huh?
The phase 2, which is the standards, is that kind of typically the landscaping standards and lighting standards and all that
Yeah.
stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
So good question. Again, this is going to be really the bulk of the document. So there's dimensional standards, landscaping, lighting, a lot of engineering. So stormwater, hillside, stream side, all of those things will be captured in module 2.
Would it be possible once we get a copy of that and get a chance to review it to sit down with you guys?
Yeah, of course.
One of our strategic plan goals is to try to work with the other jurisdictions within the county to try to develop standards that are generally the same. So if there's places where we can come alongside you guys or vice versa and make them a little bit more similar. I'd like to take advantage of that. So
Sure.
I don't want to slow your process down, but if we could sit down with you guys, that would be great, just to walk through them.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Craig. Thank you for throwing that out. We'll definitely get something set up.
Thank you.
Morgan, this is Scott Hobson with the City of Pueblo.
Hey, Scott.
I just had the question. Didn't I hear originally that this was when you looked at updating codes that you were looking at a unified code that could include subdivision and land use within one
Yes.
within one code?
That is the goal of Retool. So Retool COS is the project name, but the ultimate goal of this is to have a UDC, a Unified Development Code.
Great.
So this is rewriting chapter 7, which currently is zoning and subdivision ordinance. So all of that is already included, but we are beefing up the language so that it's not something where you can look at this document and then you have to run over to this one, so it's more of a unified.
Great. Okay. Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hey, Morgan, this is Christine with the City of Manatee Springs. Hey, so we're in the final process of interviewing consultants for our project in the city. And so I'm interested in ensuring that for developers and others working that what we're doing in Manitou isn't too wildly different than other parts of the region.
Right.
And Manitou, as you guys know, is a very challenging community to work through right now, but we're working through that. So I'll be paying close attention, and I'd like to reach out and definitely, stay in touch as you guys are working on this. So, because I just want to ensure Manitou that we're not kind of off.
Yeah.
Way in left field. At left field, this would be left field.
Well, with that said, if you want to shoot me your email address, and then I can include you on the email list that I have. So like Craig and Mark Gebhardt with the county are on that list as well, and Nina, and I can definitely include you. I also include Pablo, Scott, and I have exchanged some emails as well. So yes, the more the merrier. Shoot me your email.
Okay.
So,
Great.
So Christine and Morgan, we're actually really due for another regional planning staff meeting. Maybe it's a good opportunity to look at what you guys generate, Morgan, with the broader region. Because as I said, one of our strategic plan goals is not just work with the city, but work with Manitou and work with Fountain and everybody else, where we can maybe make them a little bit more synonymous between regulations.
Yeah.
Maybe having that bigger group discussion would be a good thing. Not in the spirit of slowing you down, but
Well,
if there's some things that we're already looking at that you guys are working on, I think it would be really great if we could all get on the same page.
I agree. Yeah, let's definitely do that.
Great. Thank you.
And just to chime in, if anyone else that's on the call later decides that, I'd really like to get a hold of Morgan, if you don't have her email, reach out to Ann Werner or myself, and we can get you connected as well. So.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Next time up is Colorado Springs Airport Land Use Plan Update. Kevin Keith, are you around?
Yes, thank you guys. Appreciate being here. So real quick, I'm just going to do a quick, update on our land use study and land use plan. So this, I think, has been something in the works for about a year now. I think is when Greg and JAviation staff actually came in front of this committee and talked a little bit about it. So we're kind of internally trying to wrap up the draft before we go to public comment, but I'll kind of talk through some of the things that we pulled out of it for everyone's benefit, hopefully. Brian, I think you can switch next slide, and then that's just a picture of the airport, so we can go to the next slide. And I apologize if you're going to be in the AAC meeting next week. This is the same presentation that I'm pretty much planning on giving at that time too, as an update to the draft as it currently is. So right now, we basically oversee the airport. The airport overlay consists of all the Part 77 surfaces, which is the approach and departure corridors. We are intending on keeping all of those at this time, and then actually expanding those to the FAA notification area, which is a 20,000 foot circle basically around the entire airport. So we would be extending east and west a little bit to include those areas for land use items that would come to be reviewed by the airport and the AAC. Slide. So a couple of things, we revised our noise contours, and this is probably going to be one of the biggest things that will affect land use. The last noise contours, I believe, were done in 99 or 2000, and those were based off of a 757. They were a lot longer, a little bit skinnier than our new 65 contours, which are actually by a ASB contour, which is the air service volume. It takes into effect total capacity of the airport is basically what we're using as our 65 TNL contour. That is the red line that you can kind of see on the right-hand side of your screen. The purple line is the 60 DNL contour ASB. And between those two, we've kind of established an airport area or airport influence area. Within that area, we do have more specific measures that we're kind of outlining for construction, notification, easements, all within that area. So within our Chapter 5, we're kind of talking a little bit more about how we can just, get the public opinion, just notifications that they're, within close proximity of an airport within that. That last note, oh, and then I guess the other change that we had is clear zones. Previously, we had adopted, it was the naval standard clear zone, which was kind of trapezoidal, similar to the RPZ. We've separated those out to where we have an RPZ and the clear zone, and these are actually the Air Force clear zones that we've adopted or will adopt, hopefully, within this. And the last table, that 5-2, that kind of goes through our permitted and conditional uses. We added a bunch of notes to talk a little bit more about conditional use. I don't think this body needs to worry about that. That's more for the Airport Advisory Commission. Slide. So a couple of other things. This is obviously very specific to the document and a little bit for the Advisory Commission, but all land use items basically within this entire area are going to come both to the airport and to the AAC for review. We were trying to kind of limit the number of items that the airport might review. We've since kind of changed that and gone back to anything within this entire area will be reviewed by both the airport and the AAC. Additionally, there was some review periods that were kind of off between both the city and the county. We want to just make sure that we clear those up. We basically put in that, we'll have ample time and no less than 30 days to review those land use items or applications. And that's just so that because the AAC basically meets on a monthly basis, we want to have that 30 days that the AAC has that opportunity to review all land use items by any jurisdiction. And let's see, the last thing on there is basically, the last thing is no response from the airport does not mean that it's automatically approved. That was another kind of misconception. We want to make sure that we have at least no comment or some kind of comment to everybody. Next slide. So schedule right now, my intent is to have this draft basically to the AAC. I'm hoping today they don't have it yet. And then we'll review the draft basically next week. If not, it'll be the November AAC meeting. So JAviation basically at this time, they've exhausted their task order. We still have plans on doing our master plan next year. At which time we'll probably start the public review and outreach portion of the land use study. in conjunction with the master plan. They'll be separate, but kind of done at the same time as what we're currently thinking right now. But that's obviously subject to change depending on how everything kind of falls together. So after we basically do all the public outreach to different entities, I know we're definitely going to talk with the HBA, the developer community, and kind of just walk them through the changes and what we'd like to see. I think once we get that, obviously we're going to be going for council approval, and then that'll be adoption to the various codes and regulations. But in a quick summary, that's pretty much where we're at right now. Are there any questions? Hearing none, back to you, Brian.
Okay.
All right, so yeah, we're done with the presentation 6A, 6B. So Councilman Pico.
Okay, you got 7A is Air Force Academy Area Working Group Update.
All right. Yep, that's me. Thank you, Andy. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Doing a mic check.
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Claire.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. So we have included in the packet today, and hopefully you're able to see that. Brian can kind of page down through some of the presentation material that we used during July, August, September. We wrapped up, so since the last implementation committee meeting, we discussed with the Air Force Academy Working Group stormwater issues and focused those conversations in July, August, September, and wrapped them up pretty much in September as far as the focal point of the working group. Doesn't mean they've gone away. What it means is that we're trying to step through the big picture look through with the working group on these three major items that the Academy is concerned about. First one, as you recall, was the airport overlay. We did that between March and June roughly, and then we started to switch to stormwater, hit those high level discussion points, had really good discussion on that, as you can see through our PowerPoints. So you'll have those as a good reference. And then the last meeting that we had last week on Friday, the group is starting to focus on what the picture looks like for transportation, not only as a region, but focusing in on the Northgate area around the Academy. And so that's where we'll start to work forward for the remainder of this year and possibly kind of wrap that up in January of 2021. We've listed as part of our presentation today that we'll continue with these working group discussions focusing on transportation the third Fridays of the month for November and December, and then a possible one in January as well. So I think the PowerPoints pretty well throw out the discussion items that we had, kind of where we focused on. Great group discussion. I think the biggest thing that came out of, well, not really out of the working group, this was sort of a motion that was set in place through the Air Force Partnership Program, that there's now a mutual aid or mutual understanding agreement between the Air Force Academy and the City of Colorado Springs for stormwater specific items. And that was just signed in the last week. So Amy Kelly can speak more to that if she wants to, but that's a big deal. So I don't have a whole lot more. We've referenced as part of the packet as well, kind of the strategies and actions out of the implementation grant, just so you have them in front of you and you have them as a reference. These are the points that we were trying to focus on and touch on through this working group process. So given that and the slides that we've included, does anyone have any questions for me at this point?
And if you want, I would just weigh in if Amy or anyone else from the Air Force Academy wants to weigh in on any high-level things from the last session on transportation or about the memorandum of understanding with the city, or anyone else on the call, feel free if you want to add to this subject.
Hi, this is Amy Kelly. I just wanted to mention that we'll need to coordinate with the city in module 2 of the retool cause project to clarify some of the comments related to the proposed airport overlay district. So I want to make sure that we get a chance, Morgan, working with you, to work directly with you and your consultants just to try to clarify some of the comments. There was a lot of version control and deadlines, and I think some of our comments may have come in a little bit confusingly, so we'll want to clarify that. So that's something we'll like to tackle in the next couple months. And then, yes, we're very excited to be able to work with the city on designing and funding and seeking opportunities to fund some of the restoration projects for the Monument Creek tributaries and various parts of the creek. So that was a very positive memorandum of understanding that was signed, and we look forward to partnering with them under the Air Force Community Partnership Program. So unless there's anything else from my team, I think there's a few others from the Air Force Academy on the phone. That's probably all I want to add to what Ann presented.
Okay, anything else from anyone? Okay, now Brian, you have this listed as an action item, but we don't have a vote on this, right?
We can, if you feel like you'd like to do that. Otherwise, we can wait till later. Yeah, there's no, oh, I see. There's no vote on the sub-area working group. No, none on this item.
Yeah, not on this item. Okay. Moving on to the next item, the final draft, the JLUS information brochure.
Thank you. So this is something we've been working on for a while in the background. And if you remember at the last meeting in July, we had presented some draft military informational brochures. Of course, when this was originally contemplated in the good old normal times, we had expected that these could be printed and handed out and so on. Naturally, it makes a lot of sense that these are formatted for a virtual distribution as needed, and then also, of course, can be printed out as handouts as well. So we really appreciate the work that HB&A Architects has been doing to provide the design work on these and helping us make all the changes on these. And so what we have are the three brochures that were seen last time, and I'll go through those and then return back to the memo. But their main goal to here is just take a look and based upon what you saw in the packet as to if there's anything else we miss, anything else we need to adjust, or if we can deem these as complete. So I will go ahead and review some of the comments and changes just to highlight a few things. We did a lot of work based upon the comments that we received to clean up some language in the aircraft and flight spreadsheet on how airspace is used. So we addressed all of those comments. We added some things related to some of the resources for connecting specifically with resources at the U.S. Air Force Academy. We did some adjustments to the maps. Apparently one of the graphics was coming out a little fuzzy, so we tried to take care of that and clean up some of the language. On the drone use, one of the key changes that we got was a comment pointed out by John Gladney at the Air Force Academy, who is now, since I understand, either about to or has moved on to another position. But he provided us the information that on one of the maps, the Federal Aviation Administration was no longer requiring, no longer had a rule that hobbyists stay away within the 5-mile rings from airports. There was kind of a distance requirement. Now it's strongly advised that they use caution, and some of the others on the call may be more familiar with this rule, but our understanding was the rule was changed, so we clarified that on that hobby drone brochure. And then we made some minor changes with wording from some commenters from Fremont County and some others with the Hammett trading fact sheet. So with that, just to go through these, we're really happy with how these turned out in terms of their very clean look, a lot of good information. And so we're hoping that these are resources that can be used by any stakeholders, any partners that want to use them, find them useful. If they have a desire to put them on their website, distribute them amongst whoever they see fit, if they see usefulness for them, and again, for the military as well. So we created these for you guys. and hopefully they're going to be useful in terms of informing the public to help them understand what some of these specific military operations are. And to go back, originally we had settled on these 3 topics because it appeared that these were ones that we got a lot of comments from the public in the last process. The questions kept coming up, well, why do the helicopters fly? A lot of it was concerned with flight and drone use. Obviously, a lot of people were getting into hobbyist drone use, so these seemed like the most relevant to start off with. So with that, our main goal today was that if it was amenable to this committee, we would ask that you deem these brochures complete, or if you do have some additional comments, we can do it conditionally, but that's what we're hoping to accomplish today. And if so, then we can finalize these and distribute these to the entire committee and get these on the PPHG website when possible. So, and are there any questions or any comments on this?
Any questions or comments? I don't see anything in the chat. Okay, no questions or comments. This is a approved brochure. It looks good. Entertain a motion to approve.
This is Tim Payne. Move to approve.
Any second?
Could you repeat that part? I'll second that. It's Christine.
Okay. Someone was asking for a repeat of the name.
Actually, that was my high school daughter in the background. She's in a class at the same time I'm on this, and so she was asking for clarification at exactly the same time I unmuted.
So
Okay.
second by your daughter then.
Yes.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, go for it, Brian.
Thank you very much. So let's see, I think the next item, let's see, we have the sub-area reports. So this next item is, as part of the grant task with these working groups and all the meetings that relate to what JVation has been doing, what the Airport Advisory Commission has been doing. We were part of our grant was intended to kind of create a plan or report that would encapsulate a lot of the actions and things that were occurring with implementing recommendations from the JLUS around the Air Force Academy as one group, and then around Peterson Air Force Base as the other group. So in order to take sort of a summary of all the work that has been done by the various stakeholders, both within the working groups and outside of them, and then tie those to the JLUS actions with what has been accomplished either during our process, through our process here through this committee, and then outside of that, independent actions that have been done. What we're going to do is kind of try to summarize those things so you have kind of a snapshot, a history of kind of what has been done, what was accomplished, some of the meetings, and then what are some of the outcomes of those and how that relates to the tasks from the JLUS. So the idea behind this is that we're going to create 2 sort of plans or reports, depending on how you look at it. And these will summarize all that, and then it'll be a standalone document, not intended for necessary for public release, but it could be done so if this committee decides this would be helpful for public consumption. But certainly it would be something to be circulated around all the stakeholders so they're well aware of what was accomplished around the Air Force Academy for that sub area and around the Peterson Air Force Base. And part of that is also documenting what were the outcomes of the ACUs? How did that relate to some of the work that was done through that working group? And then with Peterson Air Force Base, kind of where we're at now in terms of the items that Kevin Keith just mentioned, just noted on what progress is going on with their land use study and their airport master plan update. So these documents will try to encompass all of those things. So they're going to, of course, have the purpose, include the purpose of the report, why are we doing it, the list of stakeholders that were involved in the various actions that got accomplished as they relate to the JLUS, background materials, the issues that were issues discussed and addressed, and then the status of JLUS action items and the next steps. So our goal is to actually keep these around between, I'd say 20 to 30 pages is what we're trying to keep it around for each one. And then this will provide a good kind of documentation. We'll be giving these to the OEA as part of our wrap up of our grant. And hopefully they'll be useful for everyone that's trying to track these issues and understand what has occurred. the tentative schedule is that we're trying to have, we've kind of created an outline, which I have attached to this memo, outlines for each one. Obviously, this will continue to get expanded. This is just the way where we're starting. And as we start to flesh this out, we'll run it through the USAFA sub-area working group for their plan, and then also circulate what we've drafted with the Colorado Springs Airport and the AAC and Peterson Air Force Base for the stuff around that area. And then we hope to have the draft of this to this committee by the first part of next year, so that it can be discussed at our last meeting within this grant, which will be the meeting in January, and then have that finalized by February 8th or February 28th. And so we have a completed plan there. So that's what we're planning to do. But what we want to do is find out from this committee, from any of the stakeholders here, especially the Air Force Academy in Peterson, the airport, so on. Are there any things that you saw, and I can go over the outlines that we come up with, any other things that we're missing or things we need to consider, or any things we need to note as we're starting to work on compiling everything. So with that, any comments or questions in the line of this subject? Just for reference, here's the attachment with the outlines, the rough outlines.
You should all have that in the packet. Any comments or questions? Very comprehensive.
Hey, Brian, this is Lewis. I just want to say one quick thing. First of all, I think those documents are going to be excellent tools to continue forward. And just for y'all's consideration, as you submit them to OEA, I would also like to have the option, as long as you don't mind, to offer them up for other communities that are looking for examples. I have to say the PPACG and this implementation committee I've always used you guys as an example of the right way to do things. And so if you all are up to that after you submit, I'd like to be able to send it out for benchmarks for other communities to take a look at.
Lewis, you may regret that once you see what these things look like. They're going to be terrible. So, no, I know I'm personally happy, more than happy, but I leave it up to committee as to what you guys would like to do.
I'm not going to be here. I'm going to leave it to you all.
And Brian, that could be something for discussion maybe at that last final meeting in January.
Certainly.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other comments in the chat. Very good. Next one up was the draft real estate information language.
All right, that's me again. So, and for those of you that are on the phone, sorry, it's Ann Warner. As part of Brian and I kind of touched on this early on. It seemed like a low-hanging fruit.
Oh, and if I may be quick, I need to do a little apology. In your packets that you received, I believe you may have had an older version of this where the title of this memo was not correct. The agenda item was correct, but it may say the same item as the last one. So this one is draft real estate language, but it may say a different title. So I apologize for that ahead of time. Take it away, Ann.
Oh, yeah, thank you though. Basically, we touched on this briefly in 2019, but circled back around to it with a more earnest focus as part of our Air Force Academy sub-area working group. And we have included the...
They're not in here, I don't think. They're not inside.
Pikes Peak Realtors Association as part of the working group early on, and they are still included in that. So we went through some discussion with George Neem with Pikes Peak Realtors Association, kind of as a side discussion after one of our working group meetings, to focus in on the language that's used for notification to purchasers for either properties. These are residential, because that's what they work with mostly, is residential properties. And he indicated that Pikes Peak Realtors in this area has language that they use as part of their title research and in their unified, I guess it's a contract that they have with purchasers prior to the sale, that they have unified language in there. So we have also worked with another realtor that he had recommended we touch base with on the rental side, just to make sure that there's language out there for people that are leasing or renting properties within airport overlay areas. So in addition to what we talked to George about, we have also researched other real estate language disclosures for the most, and the one that we provided in the packet is the city of Aurora. They're our closest neighbor with most similar
No, because I want to see if they.
geography, basically, with military bases and things like that. So the language that we have proposed here is really closely mirrored to what Aurora has done without it being regulatory. This is going to be recommendational only at this point. But we've provided that information and also the sources that we pulled from Texas, Oklahoma, and California. So we tried to capture what other similar military civilian areas are using for real estate disclosure language. And that also will be submitted to the OEA as a recommendation as part of our grant for this go around. So that is listed. We've come up with sort of a summary paragraph, how, why we're looking at it from the JLUS report in 2019 to how we came to the language that we're looking at, along with a kind of a signature page that will be used and recommended as final purchaser agreement language. We have not run this yet through our committees for review. So this is kind of a first look by everyone. And the process after today's meeting will be to have not only our implementation committee review the language, but also provide it to all, unless you have major objections to it, go ahead and provide it to all of our working group members of the Air Force Academy Sub-Area Working Group and and other military members outside of that, to give us a good look at this and a review before we finalize it later in December. So given that, are there any questions or comments from anyone on this topic?
And then one thing I'll tack onto there, we will be taking this all back to the Colorado Springs Housing Building Association, Pikes Peak Realtors as well, to get their views on it. But we want to start with you guys to make sure we get that clarified before we send it all to them and have them take a look and get their feedback, and back to George Neem with Pikes Peak Area Realtors. So just want to add that on too.
So, Ann, this is Scott Hobson. I know that there, with all the bases in El Paso County, Colorado Springs, question I have is there any geographical distances or boundaries that are set up to where these notifications for disclosures, or is it pretty much if you're buying a property within the bases, the airport areas, that this is disclosed, or is there some sort of geographical boundaries to where they provide the notices and areas that they don't?
That's a good question, Scott. Thanks. Right now, we're primarily focused on what Pikes Peak area Realtors is using, and that's the airport overlay boundaries.
Okay.
So hopefully, so that'd be City of Colorado Springs Airport overlay that currently exists, and then hopefully as the code gets modified through retool of COS, we'll have an overlay for the airfield at the academy as well.
Okay. I'm just looking at how that could potentially apply to any modifications to our airport overlay area in Pueblo. So thanks.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, Scott, you could take the language that we've used, and I can provide additional information if you need it to help you with that process in Pueblo. Okay.
Because I know that they're in the process of completing a new master plan for the airport. So this might be helpful.
Okay. Glad to help, Scott.
And one other thing I thought of to highlight is There is no intention at this point for this to be set, going through a Department of Regulatory Affairs process or anything like that. We just wanted to start off with just creating some language so something was ready should it make sense in the future for stakeholders to carry that forward, or at least have a starting point that could be carried forward in the future should that be desired. We just want to create something like this so there's something ready to go should that be desired in the future, or just something that can be used and pulled from just by realtors in their day-to-day life, whether they're selling a home around Cheyenne Mountain or Air Force Academy or Fort Carson or so on. So that's kind of the intent behind this.
Okay, makes sense, Brian. We've had those discussions as new areas are coming into the city. The airport managers have had these similar discussions about how much we make available and disclose as these areas come in and potentially are developed closer to the airport.
And this is Amy Kelly from the Air Force Academy. You indicated that George Neem mentioned that there is already some disclosure language. Did
Yes.
I hear that correctly? And if so, how different is it from what is being proposed? And when are those disclosures made? I guess would be my two questions.
My understanding from when we talked to George is that it's at the initial contract. So they use a uniform purchaser's contract. And it's at the time that the realtor and the purchaser agree that they'll be represented by that particular realtor. I've reached out to George more than once to have him provide that specific language, and I have not seen it yet, Amy. So I'm hoping through this review process that George will provide that to us, or maybe somebody from HBA. So that's kind of it's an open part of the loop at this point.
And Keith Klein here, what specific language are you looking for?
The language out of the uniform contract that the Pikes Peak Area Realtors Association uses with purchasers.
Okay. I can easily get that and send it over to you. And
awesome.
And then we can have it's a contract I use every day of my life. So I can easily enough send that to you. Then the discussion will become where it might best be put, this language, how it might best be incorporated, because it's not going to apply to every buyer necessarily, but I'll send it over and we can have a follow-up discussion.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
And this is Craig Dossie with El Paso County.
Yes, Craig.
Just a quick question. I noticed the top line refers to buyers/lessees. How is this is one of the challenges we've had when I've spoken with the Airport Advisory Commission is the desire to notify multifamily tenants, but it's not so much that you build in the requirement to notice; it's the enforcement of that. Is there any consideration for not only providing that notice, but also how that would be enforced?
Well, that's a nexus, Craig, and I'm glad you brought it up. Enforcement can happen when you've got it codified, and this is a recommendation. So I think the hope would be that we could take it at some point to that next level. But right now, we won't address it as an enforcement issue just because we can't at this point. But I think it's an excellent item to note going forward.
Do you know if that is something that Retool is considering in the city's effort?
No, I don't think they are, because they were afraid to get too specific and put this kind of detail and review on each individual city planner. So there was some discussion, but there's not going, as I remember, there's not going to be any codification of this particular type of language in the city code.
Okay. I imagine it's for the reasons that I kind of identified. It's extremely problematic from
Yes.
a zoning standpoint or local enforcement standpoint.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Is there, based on these discussion points, I see Marla on the line. I don't know if you've got anything to add from the HBA on this perspective. We're all ears. We'd like help.
I'm happy to get what we use for new home sales, that language, and see, but this is my first meeting, so I'm not sure what we're doing, where we're going with it. But I'm happy to get that language and share what we use for new home sales.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
And just real quick, circling back to Amy, did I answer your questions okay, Amy? Or did I leave anything out?
Yes, I'll just wait to see what Mr. Klain's able to produce.
Okay.
And then I guess we'll, probably have to have further discussions, about, I guess a lot's contingent on an airport overlay for USAFA being approved. How would our auxiliary airfield be handled? There's probably some follow-on discussions about application.
Okay.
But yes, thank you.
Yep, thank you. I'm all done, Andy.
Okay, great. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, seeing nothing in the chat. Information items. Installation reports going around to the bases. Anything related to land use? Any comments?
This is Ron Jeffrey from the Peterson Schriever Garrison. I'll pass along one comment, and for everybody's information, the Colorado State Land Board met on September 9th and unanimously approved the transfer of 640 acres that are actually on Schriever Air Force Base to the U.S. Air Force. This transfer will certainly enable long-term protection against encroachment and help us ensure our ability to execute our missions. So certainly appreciate all the work that Keith Klain has done to work with the land board on that particular effort to allow us to move forward on including that as part of the actual real property of the base. In addition, Keith's also led the charge for helping to secure some lands outside the fence line against encroachment. And I'll let Keith speak to that if he wants to. But that's all I've got. Thanks.
Ron, I'd be glad to talk about that just for a second here. What he's talking about is 3,400 additional acres of surface and subsurface protections, if you will, against the wrong kinds of leases. So to his point about encroachment, we're all about trying to protect the mission at Schriever and all of the bases. And that's the first a major success we have to report after a couple of years of work with the State Land Board, and they've been terrific, I might add, to work with. But almost 4,000 acres impacted on and around Schriever that's going to help us significantly with fighting, staving off future types of encroachment in the most critical areas to the south of the base. One other issue with regard to the State Land Board that I think is pertinent to all of the bases, Amy Kelly's intimately familiar with it. We're working carefully on crafting a policy letter with the State Land Board that would provide similar protections, we hope, surrounding all of our bases and missions and airspace and training routes and training areas and landing strips and you name it. We've tried to catch all of those various potential problem areas. And the bases will see that policy letter come out in draft for their review. I thought maybe by the end of this week, looks like it might be early next. But kudos to the Air Force Academy for taking the initial stab at it. And they are in large degree responsible for what we will see when it comes out to the masses. Thank you.
Andy, I think you're muted. I saw your mouth moving.
Yep. Any other comments from the other bases? Air Force Academy?
Nothing from us unless there's someone else on the team that has something. I think I communicated what we intended to present during our sub-area presentation. So we're very excited about the Stormwater MOU and the Air Force Community Partnership Program. And thank you to Keith for all of his efforts with the State Land Board. We're chugging through some of our action items with relation to the State Land Board and appreciate it. That's it.
And this is Glenn from the Academy. I'm good too, Amy. Thanks.
Amy, is that MOU a public document at this point?
I believe so. I will check with the city, make sure they're good with releasing it. Is that Craig who asked?
Yeah, it is. Just
Yeah.
for information, if you know, the county were in a similar situation as the city.
Yeah. Let me double check. I've asked our attorneys. I just haven't heard back from them. I'll check with the city, and then if we can release it, we're certainly happy to.
That'd be great. Thank you.
It's an MOU. It's not an MOA, so I don't think it's as many contractual obligation type concerns. But let me just check.
Okay, anything else? I think we've covered the bases. Anything from the communities?
Fort Carson doesn't have anything, thank you.
Oh, sorry about that.
Mr. Chair, this is Craig Dawes with county. Just wanted to update everybody on the master plan. We've received a draft of the first 3 chapters of the new county master plan. That is going through staff review right now. We hope to have that to our advisory committee in the near future. Ultimately, once we get a pretty firm working draft of the overall plan, we're hoping to do another joint meeting with our planning commission and the board of county commissioners. We're still targeting early 2021 for adoption of the overall plan, but we're starting to actually come to shape. So very exciting time.
Nothing from Fremont County.
Andy, this is Scott Hobson with the City of Pueblo. Just an update on the regional comprehensive plan that the city and the county is working on. And I'm going to check, is Carmen Howard on the call today? Because I may have Carmen give the report if she's on. Sometimes she participates. Doesn't sound like she's joined us today. Anyway, we are working with Pueblo County, the City of Pueblo, Pueblo West, Nina Vetter with Pueblo West Metro District. The selection committee has approved the proposal from Clarion to complete the regional comprehensive plan. County commissioners are going to be the lead agency for that agreement, and they will be approving it in the next couple of weeks. And we will be doing kickoff meetings in November, and we've got about a 18-month period to schedule to complete the plan. So that's it from the Pueblo area.
Okay, thank you. Any other communities have anything? Hearing none. Don't have any other thing. The next meeting on January 29th. So I may or may not be here. If I don't make it back, it's been a pleasure.
Let's hope you don't, Andy.
Yeah, it's been great having you here, Andy. We really appreciate all your work throughout the last 5 years of this process. So thank you very much.
Okay, good luck, guys. With that, we'll call it adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.